It's literally anything that a community would want to do for enjoyment. And I get to facilitate that and help create spaces that allow that to happen. I struggle, honestly, with blurred lines between work life and private life because what I get to do for work is what I would want to do in any spare time I might have anyways. So it's really something I live and breathe every day, and can't imagine not wanting to do this.
Welcome to the Daily Parks and Rec Show Leadership Series, hosted by Craig LeBlanc, founder of DPRS Media Network, where we highlight the stories, careers, and why behind the leaders shaping parks and recreation. In this episode, we sit down with Alex Harrison, Parks and Recreation Director for Catoosa County, Georgia. Alex shares his journey from growing up around youth soccer and volunteering at local fields to building a career in Parks and Rec, and how his passion for creating meaningful community spaces continues to drive his work. They also explore the growing importance of public-private partnerships, funding challenges, social infrastructure, and how parks can help combat loneliness and bring communities together. Let's dive in. All right, we are live again. This is Craig LeBlanc with the Daily Parks and Rec Show. Sorry I was MIA for the last couple days, had to reschedule everything. I had some dental work done. I don't envy people who ever had dental work. That is something special. It's my first time in my life that I've ever had anything done. So I appreciate all the patience. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Leadership Series. So we've been doing this since the beginning. This show, I think, is coming up on its 2-year anniversary, where we highlight the careers of leaders in Parks and Rec. We help understand their story, how they got into Parks and Rec, and what's their why they continue to dedicate their life to Parks and Rec. And so today's special guest on episode 630, Alex Harrison from Catoosa County, Georgia. We've got a very important topic to discuss today, and it's about public-private partnerships. In recent days, a lot of Parks and Rec departments are getting kind of pressured around their property tax revenue and that whole structure. And so in light of that, a lot of directors and communities are starting to see other ways that they can fund the great and essential work that they are doing. And Alex is kind of well-versed in this, and it was a big chunk of our conversation offline. So I can't wait to get into that. But before we get started, I did want to give a big shout out to all of the show hosts that we collaborate with, producing weekly content. So I am one of, I think, about 21 now show hosts that produce Parks and Rec focused content, distribute it live across all the social media platforms, and then put it in our content library, which can be found on YouTube and on Spotify. So let me give a big, Carlo, if you want to go ahead and pull up the YouTube push. So we're almost at 700 subscribers. A couple of weeks ago, I asked the other show hosts to kind of help get the YouTube channel up. Fortunately or unfortunately, we did not really push our content library. If you're listening to us now, you're probably listening to us live on Facebook or X or LinkedIn. But they give horrible metrics, and they don't hold our content library. And so if you'd like to find our content library, it's on YouTube. We have, this is our 630th video. We also have everything uploaded in audio format to Spotify, so that by popular demand, you can listen to these great shows and receive some of this great wisdom from your community of Parks and Rec professionals. And you can see all the different shows. We have our content library on YouTube is broken up into different playlists. Now here is our much dated, so this is going to be the next thing we update. This is kind of like our little TV guide. So we only got about half the shows up there. We're restructuring all the shows that they'll now be starting on the hour. So we'll have like a 12 o'clock time slot. Of course, the Leadership Series is Monday through Thursday. Papa J does pretty much the same version of the Leadership Series. Great Parks and Rec retired director out of California that's now come on as a host for the weekly show called the Director Pepper Social Club. Then we have like technology shows with Smart Parks Forward and the Parks and Tech Collective, talking all about how technology is really changing how we do parks and recreation, whether it's on the hardware side with the robots and the infrastructure being able to be controlled, or whether it's on the software side, on camp registration, how software and AI is really just changing, how we communicate with our community. On Tuesdays, every Tuesday this year so far, John Prue has produced a great show for the military community. It's called On the Front Line, the Military Rec Show. You may not know this, but there's a Parks and Rec department on every military base. And as John Prue likes to call it, Parks and Rec on steroids, because they provide pretty much everything. I mean, you've got a live-in community on house, like on base housing and families and children of our soldiers. They have much more involvement in their Parks and Rec because it's literally in their backyard. And they produce like live shows and concerts and tons of stuff over there. And so he does a show every Tuesday highlighting what MWR does for our soldiers. Then on Wednesday, which is today, we have quite a lineup. So we have this show, and we got 4 shows today. We've got Leadership Series, which is right now. We've got Safe Spaces and Green Spaces, which is Thomas White talking about neurodivergence and mental health and the role Parks and Rec plays in that. Then we have one of our latest shows, Arts in Parks and Rec, with Beatrice out of Southern California over in Hollywood, highlighting all the arts program, whether it's performing arts or dancing, painting, sculpting, pottery, dancing, all that kind of stuff. And those programs are happening across the country. So she kind of highlights what the programming looks like when it comes to arts. And then our first show today, on Wednesday, our Parks and Tech Collective is moving to Wednesday, and we're going to do that show every week with Jason Hermes. So then that brings us to Thursdays. We have the Youth Sports Mastery Show airing directly after the Leadership Series. And now Aaron has picked up another time slot because he's booked out for the rest of the year. We all know that rec sports is a huge chunk of what Parks and Rec does, all of the baseball leagues and the soccer leagues and the basketball leagues, and you name it. And there's just so much going on there from athletic directors and coaches and the sports officials and pro athletes that are guests on his show. He gets it. He's got an amazing lineup. So we decided to give a second time on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Every Tuesday at 5 p.m. The Youth Sports Mastery Show is now going to be twice a week. And that's followed at 5 p.m. with the Young Professionals Network Show every Thursday, 5 p.m. If you are, and when I say young professional, that's if you're a college student studying to go into Parks and Rec as your career, if this is your first 1 to 5 years, or if you're a professor, a mentor that helps to bring in our next generation of Parks and Rec leaders, or if this is a rare bird, if you have a strong internship program, I would love to have you bring on yourself and a couple of your interns and just talk about your internship programs and what y'all offer to college kids looking for those credits they need before they graduate, and the internships that y'all offer. And then to close out the week on Fridays, we've got 2 great shows. As I said before, the Director Pepper Social Club with Papa J, Jonathan Skinner. And we close out the week with the Aquatics Life Show, which, by the way, Wesley's doing such an amazing job producing evergreen continuing education content for all the aquatics professionals. If you go on our playlist on YouTube, you can press play on any of the 20 shows that he's created so far with us. And that's just your continuing education for all of your aquatic staff. It's everything from lifeguards to onboarding, opening days, safety protocols, all training, all that kind of stuff to do with aquatics, even like the hardware and the chemicals and the equipment that you need for an aquatic center. So an amazing show there. And then we've this month, I think we've launched 2 or 3 other shows, and we've got 2 or 3 more to launch this month and probably in the first part of August that are coming on. And so probably by the end of August, we'll have 21, maybe 22 weekly shows airing with the DPRS Media Network, all in an effort to highlight and elevate the industry of parks and recreation. All right, with all that being said, Carla, if you would go ahead and run our transition and promos, and when we come right back, we'll start our conversation with Alex Harrison.
Art has the power to transform spaces, to inspire communities, to tell stories that connect us to one another. Across parks, public spaces, and gathering places around the world, creativity is bringing people together in new and meaningful ways. From murals and sculptures to music, dance, theater, and cultural celebrations, the arts help turn ordinary places into extraordinary experiences. Because Parks and Recreation isn't only about facilities and programs. It's about creating places where people belong, places where culture thrives, places where imagination comes to life. Welcome to Arts in Parks and Rec, the show that explores the people, projects, and creative ideas shaping the future of arts and culture in parks and public spaces. Hosted by Beatriz Eugenia Vázquez. Together, we'll discover how the arts strengthen communities, inspire engagement, and help create vibrant places for everyone. This is Arts in Parks and Rec, a DPRS Media Network original, where creativity meets community.
Oh, I love that new promo for that new show we have. Have you seen that by any chance? The work
I
Beatrice
hadn't.
is doing?
I hadn't seen the new promo. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's the second time I've seen it, so that's hot off the press. But how's your summer treating you? Are y'all in the death throes of summer camp? Do y'all have a swimming pool or anything like that going on?
The county doesn't. There are two operated by the two different municipalities within Catoosa County, but we don't operate any swimming pools ourselves. We just survived the annual fireworks Independence Day celebration.
Yeah.
Catoosa County calls Fireworks Fest, and so we're recovering from that while we're also operating a couple different youth sports summer leagues and getting ready for fall sports coming up as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you said Independence Day. I don't think people realize what it's like. I mean, can you imagine today if a whole country just said, "We're leaving your country and we're willing to go to war for it," and all that kind of stuff? And that's exactly what we went through back then.
It's crazy. It's also crazy that it was, 250 years sounds like a long time, but some of the history of other countries being in the thousands of years, it's not that long ago relatively. So it's interesting that not that long ago people were that united on one singular issue. That does not seem to happen today.
Oh, I know. Like when I went to visit Rome, they have like sidewalks that are 4 times the age of our country.
Right.
So it's all right. So today, I'd like to think that we're just let's just act like we're having a conversation with a director that's really struggling with where the revenue is going to come from with a lot of this property tax measures that are kind of coming down the pipeline. And hopefully it doesn't always all go through, but we just kind of have to prepare for the worst. But before we get into that, I'd like you to kind of tell people how you got into Parks and Recreation. Did you kind of discover this later in life, or were you involved as a child early on?
Yeah, so Catoosa County is on the Tennessee-Georgia state line. And so I actually live in Tennessee, but commute, it's less than 30 minutes. So it's part of the metropolitan area of the city of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And growing up, my parents volunteered to operate a nonprofit entity that ran a youth soccer program at a park that is owned by the city of Chattanooga, but it is a purely volunteer-based organization, ran the league. And so I spent every Saturday and felt like 7 days a week, basically, out at the soccer fields, either working in concession stands, or if I wasn't at a practice or a game myself, or lining fields or reffing games. And in one way or another, we spent a lot of time as a family out at the soccer fields. Is a good way to give back to the community, and also a great way to reap the benefits of being engaged in youth sports and what benefits can come from a public park as well ourselves. So I grew up going to the soccer fields, participating in any way I could. And that kind of lent itself through people we met through that organization when Chattanooga FC, at the time, semi-professional soccer team that just played in a summer league, was starting up. I started working at 15 years old in the concourse selling Powerade and water bottles to fans of the team. And eventually that led itself to becoming the on-field operations manager. I worked for the team for nearly 10 years. During that time, transitioned to going to school actually for at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga for engineering technology. Thought I was going to do commercial development, and I really didn't realize the extent to which there was career opportunity in sports and recreation and public parks and spaces. So I was going to school for something completely different. Had someone my parents knew through having operated the soccer program that at the nearby city of East Ridge, which is also in the metropolitan area of Chattanooga. They were advertising a sports coordinator position that was just part-time, and it felt very similar to what I had done as a volunteer growing up. So I eventually interviewed and got that role, transitioned to full-time, moved up to a couple different positions at the city of East Ridge to eventually being their interim assistant director. And then the Catoosa County director position became available, and East Ridge and Catoosa County literally border each other. I think our offices are maybe 10-minute drive away from each other. And so it was a very different transition. There's a lot of different funding mechanisms, and even so close, the politics in different areas can be very different. But it was a pretty common sense next step for me, and a big career move. But I've been here for a little over 4 years now as the director of Catoosa County Parks and Recreation, and we've experienced a lot of growth and a lot of changing in trends and specifically funding mechanisms, and we're even still evolving that today. But it started as a volunteer job as a 10-year-old getting paid with sour Skittles in the concession stand every Saturday morning to now being, a huge part of my life.
Mm. Now, if you had to tell somebody your why, as far as, why do you continue to dedicate your life to parks and recreation, and how is it fulfilling to you?
Well, one of the kind of trends I noticed, maybe it's regional in the South, maybe it's a national trend, but in recent years, maybe even the past 10 to 20 years, the idea of what parks and recreation has evolved a lot. And so for a long time, at least in Catoosa County, it seems, parks and recreation was baseball in the spring and football in the fall and basketball in the winter. And that's what the Parks and Rec department did. And now it has evolved, and I think rightfully so, to really include anything and everything that someone might want to do for their leisure time outside of their immediate family or their work life. Anything outside of that can fall under recreation. And in our line of work, most frequently that happens in a park. But our department manages lots of other public spaces that wouldn't necessarily qualify as a park as well. And so when I think about it, if anything you might want to do for fun falls under my job description's jurisdiction, then why would you not want to do that, right? It's literally anything that a community would want to do for enjoyment, and I get to facilitate that and help create spaces that allow that to happen. And so it's I struggle honestly with blurred lines between work life and private life, because what I get to do for work is what I would want to do in any spare time I might have anyways. So it's really something I live and breathe every day, and can't imagine not wanting to do this.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so maybe you can help me with our sales pitch to college kids that are undecided. Imagine if you're sitting in front of a group of undecided college kids that kind of don't know what they want to do with the rest of their life, not sure what major to select. What would be your testimony to them as far as why they should consider Parks and Rec as a career path?
Well, there's an epidemic of loneliness globally and specifically in the U.S. And if you want to help be the remedy to that, and if you want to do it in such a way that also benefits you personally, then what better way to do it than a specifically community funded and intended role that is purely exists to build community, build enjoyable opportunities, and get paid to do it. That part doesn't hurt.
Yep.
And it's a very stable career. government jobs are desirable for the benefits that come with it, but also, there's a lot of flexibility in the fields. There's you get to be outside if you want to be, and it's a really broad career field where you can do something completely different every day, and no day looks alike. But you get to apply a lot of the same type of skills to each different scenario, and it opens you up to a broad network of both local and people outside your immediate area. There's lots of opportunities to meet new people and travel even. So you can really make anything out of the career field that you want to.
Yeah. Alex, I really like how you highlighted this epidemic of loneliness going on throughout. I guess it's almost like a global phenomenon, and it seems like we're more connected than we've ever been as a species through our apps and social media. We kind of keep up with everything, but there's still this kind of not true connection or sense of loneliness. So, how does Parks and Rec kind of play into maybe addressing that issue?
Yeah, it can be anything for example, the book Bowling Alone talks about social capital, and the idea that there's a lot of different types of social capital, but even just the smallest interactions of maybe you have a greenway or a park nearby your house that you visit regularly, and just the walking on the walking trail at that nearby park. My wife and I, there's a greenway near our house, and it's not one that is under my jurisdiction, so I can relax a little bit better when I go there, not having to worry about are the weeds picked and are the fields mowed. But we just, through visiting that sporadically throughout the year, see the same people that might also have the same routine, and it helps us grow community that we might not otherwise get to experience. There's people that regularly walk their dogs there that we get to see, and people who we've seen their kids learn to ride a bike, and we definitely otherwise would never have met these people. And just even if you're not necessarily the most outgoing, you can't help but say hey to them when you walk by, and just something as simple as a little paved walking path can help facilitate that social capital. And then everything from a completely passive recreational facility like a walking path to, we briefly discussed the Independence Day celebration that Catoosa County just put on, and where there were so many with the 250th anniversary of the U.S. independence. There's thousands of people that have participated in that event every year and get to meet their neighbors, and there's benefits to the local economy through that, with vendors having an opportunity to grow their network. And so it's maybe not the entire solution, but it's definitely, I think, an important part of community building is having public spaces for people to interact unknowingly and growing their own social capital without even necessarily trying to.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about the social. This has kind of been a new phrase that I've seen come out of the industry. It's called social infrastructure, where you actually are building the actual land, the green spaces, the brick and mortar, the infrastructure needed to create this social environments, and then you need a place to run your programs at. But maybe talk about the different types of social infrastructure that you're in charge of and that you build for your community.
Yeah. So, you mentioned how technology has maybe connected us more while somehow also making us feel farther apart. I go back to the creation of the automobile. You look at older cities outside of the US, and there is an inherent social capital with smaller streets and mixed use development where the retail is on the first floor of a building and residential spaces on the upper floors. And you inherently meet your neighbors because you might have to walk to and from work or walk back and forth to the grocery store or whatever nearby businesses. And those sidewalks and the nearby bodegas, we might say, or local shops become that social capital, or the popular term third spaces. With the creation of the automobile, that similarly to the way technology has connected us while making us somehow be farther apart. The automobile allowed us to cover so many larger distances and get to people so much more quickly, but it also enabled our social infrastructure to disappear, because now, instead of walking past all of those local shops and your neighbors to get to work, you get in your car with soundproof windows and you turn up music. And you see it all the time with road rage incidents. People are inherently isolated from those around them when they're driving, and so they feel safer or more emboldened to maybe act more sporadically. But that's just I guess, evidence of the fact that we are isolating ourselves through these vehicles and transportation that way. So one of the things we're working on in Catoosa County and some surrounding areas is greenways is a huge push for us right now. I mentioned the walking track that you might just regularly pass your neighbors by. A greenway without that walking trail doesn't afford that opportunity to build that social capital and meet your community. And so it's a simple way that maybe it doesn't require a full-time employee to program your greenway the way it might with a sports facility. But it helps stimulate the economy by connecting those people. You're a lot more likely to stop by a local business if you're on foot or on a bike than you are if you're in a vehicle. You're just driving on to your next stop. And so not only can it help with the economic impact, but it also helps with the mental health side, where you're now getting outdoors. And so there's a potential cool project for Catoosa County, where in Hamilton County in the city of Chattanooga, just north of us, there's what's called the South Chickamauga Creek Greenway. And South Chickamauga Creek, the actual body of water, continues into Catoosa County. And so one of the things we're pursuing into the future is continuing the development of that greenway and connecting existing parks, developing new parks for trailheads along the way, and connecting the cities and population centers of Catoosa County to those north of us and in the surrounding areas, so that maybe, we've seen a lot more electric bikes become more popular, and that can maybe bridge the gap between a walking distance versus a driving distance. Maybe you can take an electric bike and still get outdoors, get some exercise, and get all of those mental health benefits while also still getting the social benefit of getting to see your neighbors and build community that way.
Yeah. I really like how you're highlighting this third spaces. And for those not familiar with, maybe you can help me kind of color that in, but you've got your home, your work, and the third space is that other place. And I think coffee houses have really doubled down on this. They're like the third space where you can do work, you can do social activity, you can just go kind of take a break outside of your home or office. But really, Parks and Rec is the ultimate third space, and they have so much more at their disposal, whether it's like libraries or community centers. Maybe talk about how we think that Parks and Rec can capture more of that third space ecosystem.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that coffee houses maybe fail at being a true third space is the expectation of spending money to stay there. And so obviously they're a business. I'm not saying that they're doing something wrong in that, but the way our economy has developed, it's like you have to pay to leave your house. Anything you want to participate in costs money. And so many times libraries are a great example of this. That I recently read a book, Palaces for the People, and it is a great read. I would recommend it to anybody. It's a light read, not like Bowling Alone, or third space term came from Ray Oldenburg's The Great Good Place, also a little bit more dense of a read, but Palaces for the People speaks to how social infrastructure can be, maybe it's an existing infrastructure project of a levee that is has to be built for public safety regardless, but now you put a walking trail on top of that levee and it becomes social infrastructure. And so that's how another way that parks and recreation can be integrated into other public services and other functions of the government. But it's inherently a place that you can spend time outside of your other two places, your home and your work environment, while also not having an expectation of having to pay to be there. And obviously there's concessions facilities, and lots of times larger parks and more urban areas even have maybe breweries or restaurants inside their parks, which is a great amenity. but the idea that you're just allowed to exist in this space, there's no expectation of paying to be there. There's no time limit that maybe you've outstayed your welcome at a restaurant and you're being forced to turn over the table. With a park, you're encouraged to stay longer, right? Like we
Right.
want you to be there. We want you to stay as long as you want to, and to help develop that social capital within our own community. And it's people who live and work in those communities that are trying to develop those community bonds, and that's why we are in the industry in the first place, to help grow those
Yeah.
opportunities for the community.
Yeah. Alex, you seem to be pretty dialed in on the current state of human existence and, what we're battling as people and how Parks and Rec plays into this. Where does all that come from? Are you just interested as a student, or does it come with a career?
Well, I recently had a really cool opportunity through the Appalachian Regional Commission. There was a 8-month leadership institute that I participated in, and just in general have always been a pretty curious person. I want to understand the why of any decision that I make, and so any place I can get more information, I really want to explore that, and specifically in Parks and Recreation as it pertains to what I do for work. If it is helping to justify more resources for my department and advocate on our behalf for, we're in the middle of budget time here in Catoosa County, and so as we're trying to advocate for more resources for our department, it's sometimes easy for the fire department or any other public safety department to justify, well, if it was your family, if it was your kid in this situation, then you would want us to have this new piece of equipment that is going to potentially save their life. And that's a really important sell, but it's also important to not miss the idea that, well, you also want your family and your kid to grow up in a community that has those social capital resources. And, we see a continuation of this loneliness epidemic in the elderly population, where maybe they don't have immediate family, and if they aren't in a community program, they could go a while without people noticing that they need help. Or if a kid is not engaged in any sort of programming, whether it be youth sports, or we have like a Pokemon trading card club. It doesn't have to be athletic inherently, but there's a lot of social skills that are important for development that are facilitated by Parks and Recreation departments, libraries, senior centers, these public resources that helping to understand the why of those functions has been important for me when advocating for resources and involvement from the community on behalf of our department.
Yeah, maybe you can help me get in touch with that leadership thing that you attended. So I'd love to
Absolutely.
learn more about that, and maybe we can do a whole episode on them. All right, so we're going to take a quick commercial break to thank our sponsors, and then when we come back, the rest of the show is going to be all about private-public partnerships, or public-public partner, all the different partnerships that benefit Parks and Recreation.
Awesome.
Today's sponsors is Outdoor Link and the National Academy of Athletics. These have been two of our earlier sponsors. Outdoor Link is helping cities and parks departments become smart parks or smart cities. So imagine if all of your infrastructure was tied into the internet, where you could basically control anything that runs off of electricity, whether it's bathroom door locks or splash pads or security lights or baseball field lights. They kind of help tie your whole infrastructure into your through software that they have. And it's all done in-house. So this is a great little company out of Huntsville, Alabama. They have an awesome customer service. When you call them, somebody with a thick Alabama accent is going to be answering the phone, trying to help you get past your problems. And then the National Academy of Athletics is helping Parks and Rec departments offer the programming that they're really not equipped to. So they do everything turnkey, whether it's after school care or pickleball leagues or flag football leagues. They provide all the coaching and staff, and they really are community focused, making sure that your programs are affordable for everyone in the community, and that you're offering the same level of service that you're already offering through your other programs. And so, Paulo, why don't you go ahead and run those two promos real quick, and then we'll come right back and start talking about public-private relationships with Alex.
In today's parks and recreation industry, communication, safety, and efficiency go hand in hand. That's where Outdoor Link comes in, delivering smart technology that empowers city departments and community planners to do more, smarter. Outdoor Link's platform connects and automates everything that keeps your parks running smoothly, from lighting and locks to signage, water features, Wi-Fi, and digital advertising. Control and schedule park lights for safety and energy savings. Remotely manage facility access. Coordinate fountains and splash pads. Provide public connectivity. All from one simple, unified platform, giving you real-time control, data, and cost efficiency. For parks and recreation agencies, that means safer spaces, smarter resource use, faster responses, and stronger community engagement. And behind every great park story is great infrastructure. That's why Outdoor Link proudly supports DPRS Media Company, helping the Daily Parks and Rec Show amplify the voices of professionals shaping our communities every day. Outdoor Link, smart, connected solutions for parks, recreation, and beyond.
They say it's just rec. Just rec, where kids learn to try again. Just rec, where confidence begins. Where teamwork, effort, and fun matter more than trophies. It's not about perfection. It's about participation. It's not just rec. It's where kids learn to love the game and themselves. It's just rec until they learn teamwork for life. It's just rec, but it's everything to them. It's more than rec. It's a movement. It's just rec until you realize it's shaping the next generation. Together, we're not just running programs, we're building a culture of confidence, connection, and community. Join us.
All right, Alex, let's kick this one off. Let's go ahead and just start with kind of what's the major issue that we're facing as a Parks and Rec community with the whole property tax, because I think most Parks and Rec departments are heavily funded by property tax, and why is that becoming unpopular for voters? Why would that be going away? And then we can talk about what are the other options that we can, other buckets of money we can access to do what we do.
Yeah, so at Catoosa County, at least, we are almost exclusively funded through property tax as far as operating costs go. Georgia has a funding mechanism called the Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax in addition to that, but it can only be used for one-time expenses for either equipment or capital improvements and like I said, one-time lump sum costs, really. And that's a penny sales tax on goods and services in the area. But property taxes is where our salaries, where our facilities budgets come from. And as we've seen since 2020 with the pandemic, property values themselves have skyrocketed, which can in turn mean that even if millage rates stay the same, valuations of people's homes can increase. And then their property tax budgets can skyrocket. And nobody wants to be charging their constituents more money. Nobody wants to incur higher costs on people just to live in your community, of course. And so it seems like there's this big trend in Georgia, at least, if not nationally, where property taxes in general have become less popular with the voter base as funding mechanisms. And one of the ways that we are trying to navigate that at Catoosa County is getting creative with public-private partnerships, even outside of just solely with the concern of loss of funding. There's also the reality that we have limited resources and we can only accomplish so much. So, for example, some of the things that we've done recently or are anticipating doing are working with the Chamber of Commerce in Catoosa County does a fundraiser 5K, for example, and it's in association with an event that we put on, but it's not really our event necessarily, but we provide support to that because we would love to have the bandwidth to be able to put on that 5K ourselves. But if the Chamber of Commerce in our area can do the bulk of that work and we can help provide some lift, whether it be through operations, staffing, or promotion of the event, then it's a way that we can offer an additional service for recreational opportunities in the area without purely having to do it alone. This upcoming weekend, we've got a partnership with a youth organization in our community that has two privately funded community centers effectively, and they do the Catoosa Creek Challenge. It's one in both municipalities. Ringgold and Fort Oglethorpe are the two cities in our county, and they both have Fort Oglethorpe has the West Chickamauga Creek and Ringgold has the South Chickamauga Creek, and they do a creek paddle. They help promote that event. The fire department helps lead a safety briefing, and it's something that we would love to be able to. Maybe we rent kayaks out or rent tubes out, but we're limited in our resources, and we have so many other things going on all the times that if we can help provide support on that day, then it's another way that we can make it more possible for that community organization to put on the event, make that community event happen, and add that amenity or that resource to our area without it solely being our responsibility to accomplish it. And those are maybe small opportunities, but it definitely adds up. You've seen public-private partnerships with naming rights of entirely new sports facilities or public parks. I was in Abingdon, Virginia recently and saw Food City Park, I believe was the name of it. It's several soccer fields and baseball fields, and the Food City is a regional grocery chain that is headquartered near the area, but they are a great community partner in that they operate all of the concessions, and so they generate revenue for the company that way, but they're doing it in such a way that provides a recreational opportunity for the community. And obviously they get the advertising from that. And, here I am, I live 3 hours away and I'm still talking about it. So it's a really interesting partnership for the advertising component on the private side, and also a way to limit the burden on taxpayers to accomplish that. And everything seems to be getting a little bit more complicated, and we've got to continue to grow and evolve to meet all of the evolving needs of our community. But public-private partnerships is a great way to help meet that need with your limited resources that are inevitable. You're never going to be able to accomplish everything you want to, but maybe there's someone that you can partner with that is a great conduit or a means to an end.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the different assets that might be more at higher risk. I guess the ones whose budget is maybe at lower risk are those that can kind of produce revenue on their own. And I'm thinking like sports complexes, golf courses, maybe even libraries a little bit or something. But then you've got some of these green spaces, or maybe they're not even a green space. It's just like a median that you have to manage and keep up with that. I mean, pretty much all, you're not getting revenue off of those. So let's maybe talk about the ones that you have an opportunity to do cost recovery, like a community center that has a workout facility. You might have membership dues there, or golf courses, the same thing. What can we do to run those a little bit better to make sure that we're covering our costs and maybe even a little bit more?
Yeah. One trend I noticed with community centers and contract services, at a previous employer, we had a aerobics class where the instructor was paid a flat rate regardless of attendance in the class. And they were taking up Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturday mornings, which is some prime real estate at a community center in a multi-purpose room. And 3 or 4 people on a good day were participating in this aerobics class. Well, the instructor's not incentivized to promote that because, quite frankly, it was easier for them to teach a class with fewer people, and they are paid the same regardless. So one of the ways we've worked to continue to offer that service, but in a more conducive manner, has been through a percentage of revenue of that class. And so maybe if you're, rather than that instructor being a employee of the department, they're a contractor who is paid, say, 80% of the revenue that that program generates. And so now if they are out in the community and promoting it, they can benefit from making more money by getting more participation. But the department on our half is also not at risk of, if attendance drops, we're not continuing to eat that loss.
Right.
And so there's lots of opportunities at maybe a passive park where maybe a yoga instructor wants to have a yoga in the park class. And rather than the yoga instructor having to take that risk of paying a rental fee to rent the space, maybe having to get their own liability insurance policy, and if nobody signs up, they're just out that money of the rent and the insurance policy. If instead we take that service on as a contract with our department, then we can help run registration. We can cover it as a program through our own liability insurance policy because it is a service being offered to our community. And we also then on the Parks and Recreation side benefit from having gained the contact information from those registrants signing up through our registration software, that we can now continue to try and market our other services to that individual. So if you're interested in the yoga in the park, then maybe you're also interested in the summer concert series at the amphitheater, for example. And so that's been a way that we can offer more programming without inherently having to hire more staff, whether it's through a recurring senior fitness program or a one-time sports camp. A lot of college-age students maybe are athletes and they want to help put on community programming for local sports camps in their area, but they don't have the money up front to pay a couple $100s to rent a gym, buy an insurance policy, and market their services. Or even if it's just a small group training, if we can do that through a way that the contractor is paid a percentage of the revenue rather than a flat rate, it helps protect both entities, and it, I think, allows for a lot more growth opportunity. Interestingly, we are kind of seeing the opposite trend to that in Catoosa County, where there's maybe more support for green spaces because our current funding mechanism is property taxes, and access to trails is the largest impact that a recreation department can have on property values. We see maybe more support for green spaces that don't have to be manicured and kept to as high a standard as an athletic surface might have to, because while we do run all of our own recreational sports leagues internally within our department, we rent our athletic facilities out to private tournament directors. And there's a sentiment in the community that, why are the tournament directors able to rent a public park that they're profiting off of, and the county, in our case, is footing the bill to maintain that facility? And so one of the ways that we try and communicate to our constituents that it does actually benefit them by having these outdoor or these outside entities come in and rent our facilities are things like I mentioned, the SPLOST tax. If they come to Catoosa County from a 2-hour area or drive away, and they're at the ball field from 7 a.m. to after midnight, then they are buying gas at the gas stations in our community. They're shopping at local restaurants, or at least patronizing our concession stands, and they're staying at hotels in our area. All of these are ways that they're helping to stimulate our economy, ease the tax burden on our constituents that live here, rather than them having to bear the full burden of the maintenance of that park. And also our local athletes can participate in these tournaments, and it provide a higher, more challenging level of play for them to continue to grow in their sport. And it's, again, a public-private partnership in that we're offering that sport at a recreational level. But if you want to continue to grow up and gain skill in that area, maybe at a more niche travel ball level, you can participate in the tournaments that we offer through that private entity as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think Parks and Rec could really almost become like a first-time entrepreneur incubator if you can kind of do like a soft launch of running your first little clinic, which is essentially like a small business that you're running. And so you could have all these college kids maybe launching their first ever little business with the help of the Parks and Rec department. And really, it's a win-win for both people.
And not just on the sports side, but regular concerts or
Mm,
craft fairs in public spaces allow for makers and artists to have a venue through which they can get more eyes on the product that they make, and startup costs are negligible compared to a normal brick and mortar store.
mm. All right. So as we're kind of coming to the end of the show, what's kind of one other point that you'd like to highlight as far as public-private partnerships, as far as maybe even like what makes a good public-private partnership when you're looking through your community of the businesses that, think is a good fit for Parks and Rec departments?
So it's easy to try and pitch a sign on a field to a company because they're used to paying for ads, right? But looking from the business's perspective, you're trying to sell the touch points that their investment is going to be seen by the community. And so for us, for example, we sell jersey sponsorships and try and look at it as the way that you're not advertising to the visiting team seeing those kids in that jersey, but instead you're advertising to the mom or dad of that kid who every time they do the laundry, they're seeing that logo of your company sponsoring the local team. Every photo they have of their kid that season has your logo on their jersey. And so it's a great way that you can really be engaged in your community, and show the values of your company without necessarily it just being a logo on a fence somewhere, right? So, from a Parks and Rec's perspective, thinking of ways that what are the touch points you have with your community, and how can you offer that as an asset to the businesses?
Mm. Now, I'm curious, how closely do Parks and Rec departments work with the convention and visitor bureaus? Because it seems like y'all are, really a lot of times when you think about the destination, a lot of the destinations are on parks land, especially for conventions and sports tourism and stuff.
Absolutely. Every department I've worked with have worked very closely. Even in our current department, the City of Chattanooga Visitors Bureau will pay to rent our parks and facilities if they're bringing in a large regional event that maybe
Mhm.
they don't have enough facilities to accommodate on their own. And so we work very closely with Chattanooga, Fort Oglethorpe, and Ringgold, all of the municipal visitors bureaus in our area, as well as the county's Chamber of Commerce. And so again, that's a way that, in our case, the Chamber of Commerce is not a government entity; they're separate. But working with them can, all tides or rising tides raise all ships, right? And so
Right.
it's a great way to amplify your resources without necessarily having to contribute all of that work yourself.
Now, traditionally, how are CVBs funded, and are they under the same kind of threat of the property tax coming in?
Most of the time, in my experience, they're funded through hotel motel taxes. The
Mm,
Chamber of Commerce is funded through membership dues of businesses specifically being members of the chamber. But most CVBs are funded through hotel motel taxes. And that's tricky in our case because we aren't funded through hotel motel tax in my department specifically, but we do contribute events that help grow tourism. So it's a good relationship with the CVB that we can partner with them, and they can help recruit tournament directors from outside areas because they know that teams will stay in hotels and they'll get additional funding through the hotel stays. And maybe they can act as a marketing branch for our department effectively, because we don't necessarily have the marketing expertise to go to these events and recruit tournament directors, or maybe we have the ability to, but we're so busy putting on the events ourselves that
right.
we can't also be out of town trying to recruit these people to come into our community. So it's a good way to work with that CVB and accomplish the marketing tactics as well.
Yeah, I see a result of this kind of property tax thing coming down the pipeline, a much closer, even closer relationship with CVBs and Parks and Rec departments.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So I have a question for you, a little tradition we have at the end of our shows. One of my previous guests, Kelly, episode 621, Kelly out of West Bloomfield, Michigan. She asks, what is the most challenging hill that you have climbed in Parks and Rec, and what did you learn from it?
Personally, it has been separating politics from personal relationships.
Mm,
It's easy to take the concern of local constituents that they don't want to have raising taxes personally as uh, an affront, as far as, this is something so important to me, and separating the idea that them not wanting to pay more in taxes is not them saying the value our department contributes is negligible.
yeah.
And separating those two things, and it's allowed me the opportunity to get creative with additional funding means, but it's also been important for my own mental health to not take it personally when they, completely separate from their experience or how they might have interacted with our department, they just, everyone's operating on a limited budget. They don't want to increase their expenses. It doesn't mean that they don't value your services or that it's not an important job. But like I said, separating the local politics or even national politics sometimes from your own personal experience, and that the value you contribute is not necessarily tied to the complaints you might see on social media.
Yeah. Yeah, and really both can be true at the same time. People want less property tax and they want a thriving, well-funded Parks and Rec department, and they kind of conflict, but we got to find a path forward.
Exactly.
Okay, so what question would you like to leave for my next guest?
I think maybe what has been the most creative partnership that you've thought out of the box in order to help contribute a service to your community?
What has been the most creative, what was that last part? Partnerships?
Partnership, yeah. So maybe how have you worked with another entity outside of your own in order to provide a service to your community?
I'm curious, what's your answers to that one?
Um, we have been a customer of Grasshopper mowers for quite some time, and recently they've become a sponsor of ours, and it's been a really beneficial partnership. Grasshopper mowers is purely independent. They're one of the few mowing or mower manufacturers that are independently owned and operated, and so you wouldn't think to ask a company you're buying a lawnmower from if they're interested in sponsoring your community sports facility, but it's a great motivator for, if you have nice athletic facilities, then the people seeing your athletic facilities and seeing the lawnmower company advertising there thinks, well, if they're using Grasshopper mowers and their sports facilities look this good, then maybe I should buy them too.
Yeah. Oh, that is a good one. And yeah, because you've got a lot of manufacturers or even like massive employers in every community that want to see a good quality of life in their communities for their employees.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, Alex, thank you so much for attending our show today and sharing all that wisdom that you've gained. We may have to do another show just on the whole public-private partnerships and stuff. And I'd love for you to connect me with that. What was it, that leadership training, or what was that you had mentioned?
The Appalachian Regional Commission, it's a congressionally appropriated branch of the federal government, but they're specifically involved in economic development in a 13-state region, 423 counties across Appalachia. One of their initiatives is a leadership training, but it's a really cool entity, and Parks and Recreation is one of their, I think, or outdoor recreation in general is a big pillar of their economic development strategy. So it's a really cool overlap between Parks and Recreation and economic development.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Alex, thank you so much for all the work that you do. Thank your staff and for all the work that y'all are doing in your community to keep it beautiful and keep it thriving. It doesn't go unnoticed.
Absolutely. Thanks, Craig.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Alex. Bye. All right, another great episode with our leadership series. Such a hot topic that really the entire country is starting to try to wrap their head around different ways that they can create thriving Parks and Rec communities in light of this property tax thing kind of looming over our head. But fortunately, we've got 12,000 experiments going on nationwide about how we can seek good funding and good partnerships that we can learn from. So really, the goal of the Daily Parks and Rec show here is just to find and highlight those directors that have found creative ways to finance the work that they're doing and kind of share that with the rest of the Parks and Rec community. And I think Alex is one of those professionals that really is leading the pack here. So really appreciate all the work that you're doing over there. All right, so stay tuned. Up next, we have Safe Spaces and Green Spaces with Thomas White. He's got a great guest, Courtney Mixon, coming on here shortly. This show is airing twice a month on Wednesdays. And then following that at 5 p.m., we have me and Jason Hermes are going to be launching the first Parks and Tech Collective on Wednesdays at our new time slot at 5 p.m. So stay tuned for those two shows. Appreciate everybody tuning in today. We'll see y'all here again tomorrow. Thank you guys. Love y'all. Bye-bye.
The future of parks and recreation isn't coming, it's already here. Across communities everywhere, technology is transforming how parks connect, engage, and serve the people who rely on them. From smart amenities and connected infrastructure to real-time data and innovative solutions, a new generation of parks is taking shape. Welcome to Smart Parks Forward, presented by DPRS Media Network and co-produced by Outdoor Link. Each episode brings you the leaders, innovators, and visionaries driving the future of parks and recreation. Discover groundbreaking ideas, real-world success stories, and the technologies helping agencies create safer, smarter, and more connected communities. Because great parks don't just improve spaces, they improve lives. The future is connected. The future is intelligent. The future is now. This is Smart Parks Forward.
In the parks and recreation industry, attention is limited, but influence is everything. Every day, thousands of parks and recreation professionals make critical decisions. Decisions on infrastructure, programs, technology, and vendors. The question is your brand part of that conversation? DPRS Media Network was built to answer that question. We are a dedicated media ecosystem focused exclusively on the parks and recreation industry in the United States. Through a network of daily and weekly shows, we inform, connect, and influence this audience. Our distribution spans multiple platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, X, Instagram, plus email campaigns, newsletters, podcasts, and live event coverage. This is not a single-channel strategy. It is a multi-platform media engine. Today, our network reaches over 214,000 connections, including 51,000 on LinkedIn, 64,000 on Facebook, nearly 40,000 email subscribers, and thousands more across podcast and social platforms. While some audiences overlap, our true value is not just reach, it is relevance. We speak directly to parks and recreation directors, program managers, and industry leaders, an audience that is highly targeted and actively engaged. Through DPRS Media Network, your brand integrates seamlessly into this ecosystem. Through sponsored show segments, targeted advertisement placements, podcast features, and host-read promotions, even custom branded content. Not as interruptions, but as part of the conversation. And we don't just operate online. We attend over 15 major parks and recreation conventions each year, reaching more than 24,000 professionals in person. Through live shows, interviews, and on-site media coverage, we position our partners at the center of the industry. Every piece of content we produce is amplified across our entire network. Multiple shows, multiple hosts, multiple platforms. Your message doesn't appear once, it multiplies. This is more than advertising. It is strategic positioning within a trusted media network built specifically for the parks and recreation industry. If your goal is to reach decision makers, build credibility, and stay top of mind, then it's time to partner with DPRS Media Network. Apply for partnership or sponsorship today. Let's position your brand where the industry is already paying attention.